morning, good afternoon, actually. This is Jonathan Small, host and producer of Face to Face. Face to Face is a program that I have the luxury time or every now and then to be broadcast at Wynn Studio in Windsor, Connecticut. Face to Face is a show that's designed to ask the guests the hard questions and give you, the viewers, the answers and information that you deserve to know. This afternoon on Face to Face, you have a long-time veteran of city politics in the capital city of Hartford. He has a background as a former Hartford city councilman. Some people may already realize who I'm talking about. The guest this afternoon is the publisher of the weekly edition of the Hartford News, a former Hartford city councilman, and a few other professional titles to go along with that. No other than Michael McGarry. Good morning, Mike. How are you doing?
Oh, fair to middling.
Okay.
Getting by somehow.
Getting by somehow.
Yeah.
Mike, it's a pleasure to have you on Face to Face here at Wynn Studio. Okay. Could you kind of let people know a little bit about yourself and background briefly before we get into our main topics?
I moved here in the 70s, bought a house on Ashley Street, and then I went out to Ohio for a couple of years and then came back with family problems. And I've been involved in probably way too many things, way too long. I'm the chairman of flood control. I'm on the Board of Assessment Appeals, which we'll talk about. The hardest, toughest job of my life is being on the Board of Assessment Appeals and try to deal with their problems. And I'm with the Knights of Columbus, and I run what's called Hartford Blooms, citywide garden tour. We might talk about that later. And I do community gardening, and a little too much, a little too often, but it's fun. I got to keep going, you know. By the way, I lost my dear wife, Marguerite, about a year and a half ago.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
And my priest said travel. So since she died, I traveled to Florida twice, Ireland, Scotland, Dominican Republic, and took a 400-mile bike ride.
Oh, you did?
All in the last year or so, yeah. So what happens is older guys, you might know this, if their wife of 50 some odd years passes away, the average lifespan after that is a year.
Oh.
And guys like me who really liked their wife and had life built around our partnership, that's hard to take. But my priest said, take some of the insurance money and travel.
Travel.
It'll keep you alive. And you know what? It has. That's why I'm here.
Well, 400-mile bike ride, that's saying something. Many young people probably have a hard time.
Well, let's be honest now. I have an electric bike.
Electric bike, okay.
But you're still hunched over and pedaling from Buffalo to Albany. All along the Erie Canal.
Yes.
That's a great trip. People should look at that. The New York State Park and Rec Association. It's a wonderful experience. Cost a few bucks and it's very daunting, but it's great. By the way, I'm writing a book about all the little towns in New York State along the canal, just as an aside. Okay. But anyway, I've been involved in a lot of things.
Right. Well, Mike, obviously you are very consistent on not just talking about the issues in the capital city of Hartford, but coming up with solutions, recommendations, and you ran for mayor probably, more times than you can count?
Every 20 years.
Every 20 years?
Yeah, way back when I ran against Thurman Milner, of all people, because they needed a Republican candidate. And I like Thurman, we get along, we're still friends. And then Eddie Perez, same thing, the governor asked me to run against Eddie. I didn't want to, but the governor said, run against Eddie. Then for that, I got to go to the national convention, the Republican convention. So. Okay, Governor, but here's the deal, you know.
Right.
And then I ran this last time to show the Republican flag, knowing the chances to win were minuscule, if at all. But I was able to bring up a lot of issues, and bring up solutions. And the mayor Arunan was very happy that I stayed in and did that.
Well, one of the main issues of late you've been hearing in the capital city is the downtown office vacancy rate, which I thought at one point was 37%. Maybe it's 40%. How significant is having the vacancy rate in downtown Hartford to the overall economic future of the city?
Well, it's catastrophic. That's the only term. Because we base much of our whole government on taxes from the commercial sector. And what happens is empty office space, which is now well below 40%, headed probably to 50. City Place, our finest building, probably the finest building in the state, is half empty.
City Place?
City Place is half empty. And there's tens of millions of dollars that'll be lost in the next fiscal year. The reason it hasn't hit us yet is a lot of these things are in court. Hundreds of lawsuits are in court about the last reval. And when that sorts itself out, we'll be tens of millions of dollars short in the in our actual cash. So it's quite a problem.
So what's kind of causing, other than the pandemic, that might have accelerated things and made some changes in certain areas? But if you look at the capital city of Hartford and downtown, you've been seeing trends as far back as the 80s of businesses that used to be downtown. WTIC Radio moved out to Farmington. Channel 3 WFSB moved out to Rocky Hill.
Shamefully.
So and then you see the XL Center basically, I think it's half empty. I don't think it's nothing like the Hartford Civic Center used to be when it was jam-packed.
Yeah.
So what is kind of causing many of these businesses and to leave downtown Hartford and having very few replacements?
Well, that's not quite right at this point. Yeah, we had COVID really hurt Hartford because, again, nobody was there and all these businesses that relied on it hurt. But it's more high tech. They used to have one well-known law firm had 220,000 square feet. Now they need 80, mainly because of high tech.
Yes.
If you were a vice president of a company, you used to have a 300 square foot office, a secretary, all that. Now they put that guy in a 40-foot corner with his computer. Maybe he's got a window, and they don't need secretaries anymore. They're secretarial pool of a couple people. The dramatic effect of high tech is more important than anything else as far as the empty offices go. And that's not going to change. As AI increases, as the computers get better, so that's very difficult for companies to justify the square footage they used to have. That's hurt more than anything. Now, it brings nice, tidy, profitable operations, which is pretty good. Also, the demographic change. We used to have a large Italian population in the South End. That's about dissipated. They've died. Families have moved to the suburbs.
Yes.
Used to have a significant Irish population. Not so much anymore. Now we have many people coming from the whole world.
Right.
Bosnians, Albanians, Somalians. Of course, we've had a lot of Puerto Ricans, a lot of Southern blacks. So it's just a change. And the change, it takes a while for that to catch up. An example.
Well, excuse me, what does that have to do with downtown
A lot,
businesses?
because it's all kind of linked. All the downtown guys in the offices love to go to Carbone's in the South End, right? And if they're not working there anymore, or it all's tied in. South End is tied in to downtown. The way the city's set up, it's like a wheel with North Main, Albany Avenue, and they all feed each other. And as there's problems in the neighborhoods, it affects downtown and vice versa. So,
well, excuse me, isn't that kind of a key problem when you just said as there's problems in the neighborhood? The South End has transformed from an Italian population with many restaurants, small businesses, to let's say a Hispanic population.
No,
that's not the case?
not Hispanic at all in the South End.
You don't think?
The South End, Franklin Avenue is an international street.
Okay.
You see everything there. I would say Bosnians have a more of influence than Puerto Ricans down there.
They do? Okay.
Oh, for sure. The Bosnians are hardworking people. They want to buy a house, they want to establish a business, but they're not quite yet been absorbed into the community. That takes a generation. And as they had all those troubles 20 years ago in that area of the world, a lot of them came here because they like to live in cities. They don't like the suburbs. They like cities.
Okay.
So we have a lot of Bosnians now, and they do pretty well. But to get them into the system is different. They're not used to going to downtown Hartford. They don't even know it exists a lot of times. So all that has to be changed. How it's going to be changed is a lot of different ways.
But isn't it somewhat of a cop-out? Because you can go to West Hartford, Blueback Square, and you can see it jam-packed, particularly even on the weekends. And I know Blueback Square, West Hartford is a wealthy, affluent town, and that may have some impacts. But to say that, well, the office vacancy rate in the capital city has diminished, and you're bringing up some good structural reasons, but how come those reasons haven't affected West Hartford Center the same way.
West Hartford Center never relied on tall buildings with offices. There are now many people would like an office in West Hartford Center because it is very walkable. It has evolved very nicely, but there's very few places to rent an office in West Hartford Center. Very few.
Very few.
Buildings, there's no great big buildings. Not one great big building.
That's true.
So that it's totally different. West Hartford Center is a nice, steady, year-by-year job of building up their nice walkable spot. They do miss some things there. There's not much in the way of retail there anymore. Most of it's restaurants, and a lot of people complain about that. Now we do have, in the different neighborhoods in Hartford, if everyone knew, we still have a lot of services. We still have a lot of small businesses. And I believe the Chamber of Commerce under Julio Concepcion will be emphasizing that soon. Yes, you can get dry cleaning downtown. Yes, you get your shoes shined downtown or get your shoes fixed. Yes, you can buy groceries downtown. People don't think you can, but you can. And so on. That's got to come back more to really make downtown more livable. Now, the advent of housing downtown has helped a bit. But one of the problems is, of course, today's same thing as in the offices. Today's computers make it so easy to sit in your apartment and do everything online. You can get your groceries. You can get your food delivered. You can get an Uber to West Hartford Center.
Yes.
Or an Uber to Rocky Hill. And that has affected downtown. We thought all those apartments would immediately lead to many, many more customers, and more retail, more restaurants, and so on. That's been a little slower than people think, but it happens. Now, the new shops especially in Pratt Street and around other places too, there's new shops with Heart Lift. Heart Lift is a program where if you invest X amount, the city will invest X amount of federal funds to fill these empty stores.
Right.
Downtown we have a soda fountain now, right there across from the XL Center.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, we have Urban Lodge, the brewery. What a business they're doing, Vons, people love it. It's like a club. Hartford Prince, as people say, how am I going to get a Hartford T-shirt? Go to Hartford Prince. They get all kind of stuff. So we're getting there. It's a slow, torturous process.
Well, the city never lost our Hartford Stage Company. That still existed there.
Oh, yeah. Hartford
you have the
Stage,
Bushnell. That
the
still
Bushnell,
exists.
Theater Works, yeah.
So
there is a lot of arts and entertainment downtown, and it's starting to ramp up even better. They put more and more things into the XL Center, and now with the new investment, they'll do even more. All those empty storefronts were mainly because it was expensive to rent, and the hours that they wanted people to work when they first built all those shops didn't quite fit with downtown lifestyle. And not enough people were living downtown. Now we've increased the downtown living, and with the Heart Lift, you see a lot of new stores. I think it's 82, new stores in the last year or so. So that's a good sign. But we definitely need a lot of things in the city, and it's going to be very difficult with the grand list going down. The way it's going to go down, it's very difficult for the city to do a lot of things you'd like it to do.
Well, isn't the neighborhood still being plagued with violence, public safety, poor school systems, poverty? And I know there's a trend to bring more affordable housing. You've seen public housing being demolished over the past few years. So it's like a mixed bag of news. You see good signs in some areas.
Well, everywhere. But
everywhere.
Let's take housing, for example. We have now the new apartments are not cheap, but every one of them has a piece of it that has to be affordable housing. Every one of them, Hartford 21, there's a good number of apartments that are affordable apartments.
Right.
All of these, the mix of the dollars includes money they get from CHFA and other sources that demands a certain number of people of modest income and even low income will be there. So that downtown, there are quite a few people of modest means, along with the people who can afford $3,000-$4,000 a month. So that mix is working fairly well.
Mixed income, you mean?
Yeah, mixed income. Yeah, yeah. You would see that on Pratt Street. People living above the stores on Pratt Street are a real mix, a real Hartford mix. Quite frankly, some people living in the suburbs in an apartment find it much more convenient to live in Hartford because of all kinds of services, including social services, hospitals, and all that, are there. Now, there isn't a big supermarket downtown, but many people, wherever they live, have to drive to the supermarket or take a bus to the supermarket now. Not everybody lives near a supermarket.
Right.
So the idea that downtown doesn't have one, but they are not a far bus ride and not a far Uber ride to markets fairly close by. So that's a kind of a weak argument, the supermarket argument. But there are services downtown you really can't get anywhere else. Stackpole, Moore, and Tryon. There isn't another store like that in the Capital District and for 50 miles around. A store that you can get handmade clothing. The old Stackpoles, now it's called Morneau's. Morneau's used to own Tuesdays. They bought Stackpoles. You can go in there, if you've got the money, it's not inexpensive, but you can go in there and get a beautiful suit. When my wife died, I looked at all my suits, and they were kind of, I haven't, bought anything for years. I said, geez Louise, I can't bury my wife in this suit, So I went to Stackpoles, and they gave me a fair deal, and I measured it to fit. I've never looked so good.
Right.
Yeah, I wish Marguerite was still alive for a lot of reasons, but to see me looking that good would have made her feel good.
Right.
But there are other problems. Let's talk a little bit about the flooding problem.
Well, I was just going to ask you that about the latest office building that's going to be built or open on Barber Street, I believe in February, by MDC. I guess establishing community outreach work out of that building. Is that a good sign?
Very good sign. MDC is trying to step up to the plate, remembering unless they get funding otherwise, and they're getting funding otherwise, if they were to try to do it as MDC, they'd have to raise the water rates again. When that big tunnel was built in the south end and other sewer fixings, it added to the water bill. Some apartments, I'm on Board of Assessment Appeals, the hardest job I've ever had on Board of Assessment Appeals. Some people in low-income properties, the water bill is higher than the taxes.
It is?
Yeah,
Okay.
because the buildings are kind of old and kind of ramshackle, some of them. But the water's still got to be on. And even though the tax rates might be low because the building's not so hot, still they pay more in water bills than they do in taxes. And it's really hurt a lot of people. Blue Hills, for example, maybe homes never should have been built there. Way back when they built those homes, maybe 50, 75 years ago, things are different than now. And a lot of it was very wet land. They just filled it with dirt and built the homes there. And people were very happy to have those nice little houses, nice little backyards.
All right.
And then, over the while, the nature will out. And it was a flood zone, kind of like a flood zone, kind of like a swamp, kind of like wetlands, a lot of that land. Just because you put 10 foot or 8 foot or 6 foot of dirt on the top doesn't mean nature's not going to come back. So you need a sump pump. That's helping a lot of people with sump pumps. You need to divert running water. You need to have a better sewer system. But a lot of it's just nature. That land over the 50 or 60 or 70 years those houses have been there is taking back. Nature's taking back with the groundwater. So you're going to have to find a way to siphon up the groundwater. It's very difficult. An example.
Well, excuse me, Mike.
go
This past summer, we've had a lot of rain, a lot of floodings, and you've seen the criticism. Obviously, you pay very close attention to the news. Community activists, people like Bridget Prince, attorney Cynthia Jennings, has been very critical, particularly of MDC. Now, I believe MDC and the city of Hartford was found, I don't want to use the word guilty, but they were found responsible towards some of the flooding and the sewage issues. Is that accurate or not?
Yeah, back in the 1890s, the water setup was not correct. To say, quote, save money back then, they really didn't lay the sewers out correctly.
Right.
And that's led to a lot of problems. What was back then way less than $1 million is costing us $1 billion. Down in South End, they have a huge tunnel going from West Hartford all the way through the South End, all the way to the MDC where they do take care of the water. It's a huge tunnel you could drive a truck through.
Okay.
And that cost $400 million. They were going to do a similar one all the way up to the North End, But if that had to be paid for by the taxpayer, the homeowner, people couldn't stand it. Bad enough to it went up with the South End thing. So now it's all being sorted out. It's $170 million to take care of some of these sewer problems. And they're working on them now. You see all over town. It's hard to drive around town sometimes when the weather's good because the streets everywhere are being dug up. Farmington Avenue is driving me nuts.
Okay.
Yeah, because I live near there. But anyway, it's coming along. Nothing will ever be perfect. But sometimes the sump pump, like Shirley got one, council there, Shirley Sturgeon. Yeah, sump pump worked.
Okay.
Sump pumps sometimes take care of the problems. Other times it's exterior. How is the foundation built? Was it built to keep the water out? How are your drains, your gutters? Do you have the thing with the gutter where the water comes off? It's a multiplicity of problems. Nobody is particularly to blame. There's spread out blame all across from the 1990s up to poorly built homes.
Well, that might be true, but again, if EPA finds that the city of Hartford and MDC is responsible, or they should be the ones in the position to fix the problem. This is coming from the EPA.
Yeah.
So we could talk about history, how the designing, all that.
Well,
is one thing.
There's two sides to it. If you say, okay, city and MDC, you got to go in tomorrow and fix the problem, that means they've got to get the money for it. If they take that money out of the poor widow in Blue Hills and raise her tax rates and raise her water bill, it's not going to do her any good to force her out of her home. So everything's balanced. So the funds now are coming from other sources.
Federally funded?
There'll be federal money involved, there'll be state money involved, and we really can't raise the money from the widow living in Blue Hills on a tiny pension.
Right.
I'm on Board of Assessment Appeals. When these ladies come in and say, oh, you're doubling my taxes. I've got a 1940s pension, and my husband died 20 years ago. Social Security is so little. And to raise her cost is dramatic, and we did this last reval. So we had to try to find ways to help them with the cost of their home. And we helped a lot of people, but a lot never even applied. Everybody who listens to this program should understand, Board of Assessment Appeals is very caring in all the towns, but you got to prove your problem.
Right.
If the house next door to you sold for $300,000, your house looks like that house, what do you think they're going to put on it? $300,000. But if this house has an in-ground pool, if this house has a fixed-up basement, if this house has got all new this, all new that, that's why it's over 300. If you're sitting on a house that's 50 years old, right, and your cellar has water, and your roof leaks, and you got nothing in your backyard, your house isn't worth $300,000.
Right.
So if people have problems, this is some advice each town should have. If you got a problem and you think your house is overvalued, overtaxed, if we value your house at $300,000, but you got $100,000 worth of work needed,
right,
you bring proof of that to Board of Assessment Appeals, and they will take it into account. In our case, I'm on the board, and we take that into account.
Right.
We say, what about your roof? What about your kitchen? What about your bathroom? Do you have water in your cellar? How's your backyard? Does it flood? And so on. If someone has those problems, obviously the house is not going to sell for what the guy next door without those problems did, or the guy down the street.
Well, let me ask you something, Mike, because we're getting, actually, believe it or not, we're running low on time. Time is moving fast. Do you think the capital city is being managed and run efficiently, efficiently the way it needs to be run, or do you think there needs to be some policy changes, some mayoral, we already had a mayoral election, but do you think city government needs to be done and operated differently?
Yes, it was understaffed for the last 5 or 6 years, dramatically understaffed. 100 cops short, 43 firemen short, 25 people short in the development department. Your salesman, your development department, was short 25 people. It would take months to get a business license. We went from 9 inspectors to 3. You know, and that means everybody's backed up trying to get inspected, and then one inspector's got to come in, another. All that has to be changed, and everybody knows it, including the mayor going out and the mayor coming in.
Right.
It was a financial problem, and I understand why the last administration had to do these things, but it had a dramatic effect on a lot of people. Because if you want to do something, you need a permit. You can't do it till you get the permit.
The permit.
If you get the permit and you do it, it adds to your tax bill a little bit, especially if it's business, and it helps the city. But it's almost a catch-22. You need money, you don't have enough, so you fire your salesman. You fire your salesman, you don't get any more sales.
Sales, right.
Same thing with housing. If you want to build something, and of course add to it, whether it's business or even home, it's going to add to your value, add to the tax rolls, and give you some money.
Right.
But if you can't get the permit, you can't build.
Right.
So Aruna's right on that now. His administration's on that in a big way because it affected him. He did the land bank. The land bank had to go through a lot of steps to get a piece of land to fix it up and do something with it.
Right.
So he understands more than anybody. So they're tackling that problem right now.
Right.
And again, investments are being somewhat tackled by Heartlift. I want to see that done for offices too. If we had a small office downtown, that would help. The minute you did a small office downtown, you have a business person or property that's got to be taxed. Not too bad, but got to be taxed. The guy who has the building, you know, will have to pay a little more taxes because he's got a tenant. And you'll have a guy in the street or a gal on the street going to lunch, bringing people into town to visit their office, right?
Right.
Parking a car, cars. So you have to find ways to address the problems that are there. You can't just say, oh, we can't do it, raise the taxes. Yeah, counterproductive. Raise taxes, people are going to leave.
Right.
Or not invest.
Or not invest.
So it's multifaceted. And again, no one person or one department or one city or one state or the feds is to blame. There's problems across the board. One ties into the other. So that Gordian knot, you have to somehow cut through that Gordian knot and move faster on all these things.
Okay. Well, Mike, that's going to have to be your last words, believe it or not. Let's
move faster.
Move faster, and let's try to end it somewhat on a positive note.
Yep.
I think you did a great job breaking down some solutions, not just talking about what's wrong, but you got some good recommendations, some things that you feel is needed. And people could always read your weekly columns of the Hartford News that you published every single week.
HartfordPublications.com, worldwide.
Worldwide.
We're a worldwide newspaper. HartfordPublications.com, every week.
Okay.
Wednesday night is a new issue. Comes out on the street on Thursday. HartfordPublications.com.
.com.
Great.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. McGarry, this is Jonathan Small. I had enjoyed hosting Face to Face this afternoon at Wynn Studio in Windsor, Connecticut, with special guests, publisher of the Hartford News, former Hartford City Councilman Michael McGarry. And every now and then I'll be doing a program here at Wynn Studios. It could be face-to-face or it could be all about you. But until I see you again, for people out there, have a very blessed day and keep the faith. Thank you. Cut. Okay. It's a little different for me doing something here. I'm used to access.
This is so much better.